All right, everybody, we are live in Synergy Solution Sessions. I'm Dr. Kevin Drina. Thank you and welcome. I have the other doctors here on board, and we were talking pre-chat here about some really interesting topics. The tree of life and something that is an amazing concept. I wonder if it is, George, the tree of death. You talked about that. It's a very interesting concept, and there's things on the internet that are not really easy to find these days. So, is this something that you just had an awareness of, or what happened there? Well, let's give a little background story real quick. So, what was going on was one of the clients Dr. George worked with would say after a couple days the same issue would return. And so George had which is what the beauty of being in practice is the questions and the challenges posed by the patients allow the doctor to go deeper in thought and perspective and, start digging and do the work that a doctor does, like a scientist. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. It's like, I was talking about somebody the other day. It's like mental kung fu. We're figuring out moves. Yeah.
How much water is behind the dam, and can we go upstream? So should I describe what it is that I found? Is that what you're asking me?
Well, yeah, let's talk about it. So there was an audio. Sorry, I had an audio issue over here, and the audience. So hopefully it's coming through okay now. But with that being said, we were talking about a patient of George's, would say had remarked that after a couple days, the symptom would come back and kind of like a similar pattern. And so it caused Dr. George to do what doctors do and be the scientist and dig deeper and ask some different questions. And he just found, well, go ahead. He found there's more and more root levels to work with people. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. The question I asked is, can I go deeper? I got a yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then through some of the questions I had asked over the years, I realized that there's a moment when the first subluxation, when the subluxation we're addressing in her neck, let's say, first occurred. And, it occurred, it probably was there for years, if not decades before we got to it. So I thought that first moment that it occurred is the seed. And if it persists, if the body can't clear that subluxation in a week or so, then it starts to send out little roots. And then the trunk grows, and then the branches grow, and then the leaves pop out. And then finally fruit happens. And the fruit is really that's the crystallization of the vertebral subluxation. It's the symptomatic picture. It's the person going, I got to do something. So, medical folks would treat the fruit, cut it off, do whatever they do. Chiropractic folks are trying to get to the cause of it. And so we often enter the body in a more superficial level and peel away a bunch of layers, sort of melt the ice till we can see that frozen person inside of there. And so sometimes you get all the way to the original event, the seed. In this case, I got to the trunk, and so we got part way in there, and I'll see next week what changed.
Okay, well that's good. We'll follow up with that story next week because that'll be interesting to keep track of. So it makes sense. It's the idea of what we put our focus and attention on grows, and same with things that we ignore can grow, just like a pile of garbage, we can say. And go ahead, George.
One quick thing there, this might be important too, is that by identifying that we're at the trunk level of this subluxation, a different constellation of points presents itself. So it's like the points I would have tapped on, it's a whole different thing now because we got to the trunk level. And that's the beauty of it. We change the vibration, and a different thing to adjust shows up.
Right on. So what if for people that may be new to the concepts we're talking about here in Synergy Solutions, and what Dr. George is talking about with how he went about seeing and experiencing and then correcting this new set of points to address on the client's body, the patient's body. I would recommend, well, definitely go to synergysolutionsessions.com. It's in the description. Click the link to get there, and you'll learn a little bit more about what we're talking about. And weekly, I'm adding material to build the knowledge base that you can begin to understand this whole thing that is commonly known as quantum. But how do we actually turn and begin to use the knowledge that has been ascertained over what, the last 130 years or so? I mean, it's an ever-growing body of knowledge as we begin to understand what it is to be a human being. And I think that's still being discovered. I don't have the article up and ready, but I know it was either a year or 2 years ago, there was a new organ that was discovered, and just a different understanding of how tissue functioned in the body. But with and I was in this, the video I was prepping for everybody at home is a conversation on a website that's called One Chiropractic, and I'm going to share this with everybody at all the doctors, but I'm also going to share it with everybody at home. So pardon me, this is live. And I'm going to make the switch right here to show this. We're going to show like a 3-minute clip, but it begins to show us about the different. We're still discovering what it is to be a human being, and that's what's really, really amazing, in my opinion. So let me get a couple of things sorted out. Good. Let's hit the play button, and I'm going to start from the beginning so you can see the credits. Just a few seconds of that, and let's get going. Because I always want to give credit where credit's due, that's for sure.
Hello, everybody. This is Baron Hoig with One Chiropractic, again with Dr. Richard Barwell, continuing our sessions on neurologically based chiropractic. And in our last session, we were talking really about the art and the philosophy of chiropractic, and really where some of the inconsistencies lie within those. And Doc, we were finishing up last time really talking about the philosophy, and part of the philosophy is this idea of universal intelligence, or the innate. So kind of explain to me, where does that fit into this equation when we're looking at universal intelligence?
This all sort of reflects back onto that concept of vitalism too, because we're talking about energies. And the minute you start dealing with energy, you start dealing in a world that we don't fully understand. There's so many things now that are starting to become aware. For instance, we're starting now in EEG work to look at areas called gamma and high gamma and hyper gamma, where we're just starting to understand that these things even exist and what happens in the brain in those areas. And it starts to answer a lot of the questions that have appeared to be sort of voodoo stuff before, and especially when it comes to things like network spinal analysis. And I keep picking on that because a lot of people don't understand what's going on there. They don't understand what's happening with things like activator. Oh, that's not going to do anything with that activator thing, but it does, because there is an energy that's involved. So I'd like to get into a sort of a new look at universal intelligence and innate intelligence and the relationship with this to chiropractic. So universal intelligence, this is part of one of our principles. It says universal intelligence is in all matter and continually gives to it all its properties and actions. Well, if that isn't quantum physics in explanation, I don't know what is. I mean, that's the definition of quantum physics that opened up at the turn of 2 centuries ago. That's when it was first explored. And we're still looking at it today. And that's what that collider is looking at now, is that kind of information. So here's what we...
And by the way, he's talking about the Hadron Collider in Europe there. Switzerland, maybe? I forget what nation it's in, but let's continue.
We need to understand, though, about this matter business. And it's we sort of read this and go like, okay, I don't know what an atom gives it properties. Yeah, but the problem is this. Matter is in a cycle of constant change. It goes from order to disorder to order to disorder. If you've ever studied fractals, you know that fractals show us a breakdown to begin with, but within that breakdown, there is an order. Mm-hmm. So it goes from order to disorder to a different order to a different order to a different order. And this sequential ordering of events explains why evolution is the process. if you want to pop down here, the true meaning of evolution is not the evolution of one life form on Earth to another, but it's the evolution of the expression of intelligence. And that's, to me, very, very important, because as intelligence becomes more organized, as the direct relationship between the organization of that energy, you start to get more intelligence. For instance, an atom, when you organize an atom, you've got a piece of matter. You change that organization, you've got a different piece of matter. You start putting the atoms together.
And that's really the basic point there that we wanted to share for today. So thank you for letting me do that. Let me bring everybody back. All right, here we are. So let me reorganize the screen a little bit. And we are back in action. Very good. So, gamma, high gamma, hyper gamma. And what does that really entail? He, as he said, begin to give credence and recognition that we are discovering a whole new level that has been, how do I say, the human being has been able and does function in these realms already. It's like we can look at radio because it was just accessing knowledge and then applying to things that we could build to interface with that energy range. And now we have radio and then television and cell phones and Wi-Fi and just, well, how far does it really go? And how far does the human body operate and how can that be influenced? Those are the kind of questions that intrigue me because of what we're doing here with the KST work. Because we can, as in some of the videos that people getting in the email sequence, in the education component, essentially is Dr. George explaining how the field flips with the OD. I love that explanation. So it made so much sense because, as you said, any self-respecting magnet has a North Pole and a South Pole. And and what it means is, it's a funny joke in the sense of it's just because it is a magnet, by default it has that. It's because you are alive, you are breathing, you have a heartbeat. These type of phenomena in life. So that's the fun part. Anybody want to add anything? There's a lot there I shared. Anything that was inspiring for you, Dr. Vesna, Dr. Sasha? I'll call on you two first. Dr. Vesna, anything that came to mind when you were watching that, something that inspired you?
What inspired me was when he said evolution is the expression of intelligence. Yeah, so it's ongoing evolution, isn't it? As the intelligence expresses itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that line was, I replayed that like 3 or 4 times today, listening to that line. It was very beautiful. And Dr. Sasha, any thoughts on that in regards to what we're doing here with Synergy Solutions as well?
No, nothing really. I think it's been said. No, I can't think of anything new.
Okay, beautiful. And Dr. George, thoughts?
Evolution is the expression of intelligence. So the innate intelligence of the body's job is to maintain the organism in a state of active organization. So each individual is sort of evolving within itself, and all of the matter of the universe that's alive, I suppose, is evolving too. I don't have my head fully around that concept, but evolution's an interesting thing. It happens gradually, and every now and then it happens suddenly. So maybe that's
I don't remember if it was later on this talk or it was something else I came across in doing my work this morning. Well, it separated the idea of evolution being from species to species, and it was more about the individual evolution of a single species. So think of and later on they go to with an analogy of baseball, and think of the speed and the pace and before I don't know the years, but in the late 60s, early 70s, introducing other races, the first black player in sports, in baseball, and that was a huge deal. But it changed the game. It evolved the game. Everyone had to level up. Everyone, because there was different experiences, and in honoring those differences, newness was created. A better experience was created because of difference that we had to integrate and work together. I mean, take that concept today. That would be refreshing. I may say.
Right.
Yeah. So moving forward, go ahead, George.
Yeah, I can't resist. I came up with a term the other day based on people talking about the ancient people using psychedelics and their minds expanding. The modern version of what you just said would be when they introduced doping in bicycle racing. Like when Greg LeMond came back to race, everybody was like a step faster. You realize there's doping involved. And so the term I had come up with is transcendental medication. So it kind of struck me as funny. But that's me.
Well, in the analogies you keep going on, depending on your personal interest, I look at weightlifting, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was really the person who took it from, people moving like pieces of wood around and things like that with their arms to using weight room and basically creating a whole system that has, of course, spawned the whole gym and CrossFit. I mean, every gym you've ever been in is pretty much following the footsteps of that mentality and weightlifting, and then even doing some listening to the history of chiropractic. He goes on to talk about how every year at basically, if I could give it a different term, the National Chiropractic Convention back in the early days, BJ would be doing, or DD would be doing, or I think it was BJ in the story, would be doing a different technique. And, it would confuse everybody because he wasn't consistent in his way, but he found a deeper principle. And almost regardless of different expertise and different techniques, the result was the result greater organization. And so that's when we get to focus on the brain function, the EEG. And this is where we start to make the transition between remote work and hands-on work, is this brain, this EEG. How is the brain functioning pre and post after intervention? And now with this beautiful insight of the gamma, the high gamma, the hyper gamma, this is a whole new world, a body of research that will be explored. I mean, another 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I'm sure, and beyond. It's exciting.
It's exciting. It's interesting.
Super interesting.
It goes back to a question I had for a lot of years as a chiropractor. Which is more important, technique or intention?
And go right into the intention, because we have chiropractic in many ways. And this is a hard look at the profession in some ways. It's like calling yourself out, and it's become very mechanical when really it's all about the nervous system and the neurology. Right. And I'm sure. So with that being said, I mean, look, I'm trying to recapture something I'm watching that has 20-minute episodes in a series of 50 emails, and I'm like, whoa, how do you boil that down? And that's the point, because the human body, the human being, the human consciousness, all of that wrapped up into one is just this amazing thing, and we get to learn how to operate it in better ways. And interventions such as this have been quite delightful for me to become organized more and more so in different ways. Pretty fun stuff. So that's kind of big and kind of deep there, isn't it?
Let's evolve.
It is. So we're going to shift gears right now. I'm going to be sharing the next part in the private members area in the Synergy Solutions Facebook group. And that's where we'll be talking more about the intention of today's work. We'll be going into the actual healing session where we do the physical work. The doctors each will be connecting with the method that we are taught in the KST seminars, core and specific technique. I have links to that in pretty much any of the websites and things like that. So if you really want to learn how to do that from the original source, please go to if you're in the Philadelphia area, it's happening on November 6th and 7th, or 7th and 8th, the weekend there.
Something like that.
Whatever that is. And with that being said, I'm going to shift those gears, and we're going to go over to the private area. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in for this open access part of Synergy Solutions. And so just give me a moment, everybody, and we'll do that.